Comic Book Savant, episode 445. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This week, we're going to be doing a follow-up since when I did the 13th anniversary show, I did a Q&A portion in that podcast, and I put it out in the Facebook group and on social media about how did you guys feel if I made this kind of a reoccurring thing and make it a new series on the podcast. And a lot of you guys responded positively, said you would like to see it. So I came up with the whole concept of Ask the Savant. So it'll be a reoccurring. I don't know how frequently. I guess it depends on when I post threads, how quickly I get a good number of questions that I feel that will fill out an episode to kind of record. So it might be like once a month. It might be a little bit longer than that. It just gauges on how many questions you guys have for me that I feel like will fit into an entire episode. So this is going to be Ask the Savant. I guess it's technically part 2, even though this is the first fully dedicated episode, because that was just, like I said, I just tried it out in the anniversary episode as a just to see how it would go over, and you guys really seemed to like it. And I had fun answering questions from you all as well. So I think, like I said, as long as you guys stay interested and you keep having really fun questions for me to answer, I'm going to continue to do them. So before we get into all that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. If you like this show and you like to find more related comic book content, it's a one-stop shop for where you can go to find other podcasts. There are literally hundreds of different podcasts and shows listed there that are all comic book, sci-fi, geek related, all the stuff we kind of love and enjoy. You will find something there for you. They have podcasts that is like myself, like a single person podcast. You have roundtable discussions. You have 2-3 hosts. There's so many different formats, and you can find podcasts that are specific to a publisher, individual character, or team. So you have a lot of variety to pick and choose from. So again, it is a great place to go as a resource to find podcasts to listen to. And if you're an aspiring podcaster or you have started a podcast, you want to help your podcast audience grow, you can contact the administrator. They have links on the homepage where you can seek out joining the Comic Podcast Network to help raise your profile to help you get more listeners. That's kind of the reason why we all came together and came up with the idea of doing like a network to help each other cross promote one another and different things like that. So it can be a tool if you're just a listener, or if you're an inspiring or you're starting out podcasting as well in the comic book area, you want to grow your audience. It can be a resource on both sides. So definitely it's something to worth checking out. So if you're interested, go check out the Comics Podcast Network over at comicspodcast.com. And let's jump into this episode. So I got a good number of questions. I need to put in the next thread that I'll do for the Ask Comic Book Savant episode 3. If you want me to include your names in with the questions, I'm leaving them out for now, and I'm just going with the questions themselves. So the first question that I got is that, are you into the horror comics genre? If so, what are your favorites? And for anyone that's been a long time listener to the show knows unequivocally I hate. Well, I'm not going to say I hate. I've just never been a huge fan of horror comics or the horror genre. Not only when it comes to comics, like television shows, movies. I don't like horror, scary stuff. I just never have been a huge fan of it from a kid to as an adult. I guess the closest thing, if you guys know, I love the Walking Dead series. I watched the TV show for a number of years, and then I just kind of fizzled out maybe 2-3 seasons ago. I think I just totally just was fed up with it and stopped watching it. But I continue to read the book. I think I'm like a year and a half behind because it had the abrupt ending. They had the surprise ending to the series, and I have the issues. I just have to sit down and finish reading the book. But The Walking Dead would be the only exception. And I think of The Walking Dead less horror and more psychological thriller than horror. But that's the only kind of what most people would classify as horror as something that I would read. And it was funny because I used to tell the story of how I got into The Walking Dead. The first time I read it, I didn't like it, and I went to a Comic Geek Speak meetup, and the owner, he's passed away now, of the comic shop that they all originally met and used to work at, saw me kind of contemplating. I think I had read the first trade of The Walking Dead, and I was like, okay, I'm just not feeling it. And I think it was like maybe the first hardcover that had the first 12 issues in it. And he was like, he's like, try it. If you don't like it, he's like, just let me know and I'll refund your money. You can keep the book. He was like, just email me. Here's my email. Heck, he gave me all this information. And, because at the time I was living in North Carolina and I went to the meetup. It was in Reading, Pennsylvania. He's like, I'll refund you. And I'm like, oh, that's bold. Like, he's strong about, the product. And I took it home. I read it, loved it. And then I start reading the series from that point on. And I normally was the one book that every month that I would read until about a year and a half ago, and I just started reading more for the podcast and just missed reading comics. So I start expanding what I was reading, so it kind of fell on the back burner. I kept buying it, and everything, but the issues just have been stacking up. So I have about 18 issues to read to finish the series, which I'll probably do sometime soon and do an overall review of the series and how I felt about it at some point. But yeah, The Walking Dead would be the only quote-unquote horror comic that was one of my favorite overall books, period. Next question I got, what do you think about motion comics? I haven't had a lot of experience with motion comics. I know when comics were first, right before really the digital boom happened, because I think of the digital boom as far as when comics really went mainstream with digital is when the New 52 hit, because that's when DC made the initiative that they were going day and date with their digital releases, and that there was going to be codes in their comics, and I think that changed the whole game as far as digital comics as I thought of it. Now, I had dealings with digital comics even going way back as far as 2009, 2010 is right before me and my second wife got married. When the first iPad came out, I had bought the original iPad when it came out, and I got in the Comixology and the Marvel and DC apps, and I was flirting around with it, buying digital comics back then. But it really boomed, like I said, where I really felt like it hit mainstream to where it is now is in that New 52 period. And so in that between that time when the New 52 hit off in that 2009, 2010 period, they would have some motion comics, and, they were okay. They were not anything that I gravitated to. I think, like I said, I viewed a couple here and there. They didn't do much for me personally, where it was something like I would seek out a motion comic if given an opportunity. I'd rather just read a comic digitally if I'm going to read it in pose of motion comic. That's just a preference. Maybe I haven't seen any recently. This has been a while ago. So, I guess if it's done extremely well, maybe it would be cool, but I kind of prefer the traditional style of reading a comic, be it physical or digital, compared to something with a lot of animation or motion in it. Because then for me, at that point, then I love animation, and just animate it fully at that point and give me that, opposed to a motion comic. I feel like that's kind of a cheap cheat in between, a comic art and great animation. I'm a fan of both, so that kind of is a weird middle for me that I wouldn't prefer. Next question is, do you have a way of keeping your digital comics organized? The majority of the digital comics that I have, I do have through Comixology all my accounts, as far as like my Marvel account, my DC account, all filtered through Comixology, and even like Image when they were selling their comics separately digitally, they all funneled in, were synced to my Comixology account, so they all are in there, and you can sort them alphabetically by series and all that kind of stuff. So that has like kind of a built-in sorting and ordering to it. Any books that I have backup copies of, because I've talked about this more so on YouTube, because I get more questions about Comixology Unlimited, especially. So in my comic book collector's guide series, I do a lot talking about Comixology Unlimited and digital comics a little bit more than I do here, where I go into detail of that. With Comixology Unlimited, most of the comics that you buy from most of the independent publishers, going from Image, Valiant, maybe Dark Horse, but most of the independent publishers, they actually give you the option to download your digital copies of the comics you purchased from them through Comixology. You can either download them in CBZ form or PDF files of the comics. Marvel and DC, you can't. But most of the independent publishers, you can. So I always go in every so often and see what new comics I have backup rights to, and I will download them. And I basically have a similar order. I have a digital comic books folder on an external hard drive, which I have individual folders for, each individual comic series. And then I'll have the individual files for the, whatever issues in each individual folder. But I'm OCD. My wife will tell you that, like, I am seriously OCD. So, like, everything on my computer is super organized. Like, if I could break down and do a video of, like, how organized I am, it's, like, insane. Like, everything has a folder within a folder within a folder, and everything is labeled, categorized, alphabetically ordered in said folder. If not, it will drive me crazy. So that's kind of a personal thing that I have going on. But so that's normally how I do it. Normally Comixology, again, is my main hub for the majority of my digital comics, and then the digital backups I have I kind of sort in a similar order. Like I said, each series own folder plus subfolder for what the individual issues or what have you. So yeah, very, very tightly organized. Then I got another question, which was kind of funny because some of the questions you ask me are very informing to me as a podcaster, because certain times I feel like, for far as responses or lack of responses I get on stuff, I tend to shy away from different stuff and not talk about it as much, or think you guys might not be interested in it. And then I get these questions and I'm like, oh man, I would have talked about this stuff a long time ago if I knew you guys were interested in it. And I've done it. Again, that content has been spread out other places like YouTube. A lot of people are in other countries, so they want to know more about digital comics, because a lot of them, that's the only way they can get them. And then when I did polls, or I try to gauge stuff, more of the people that were listening to the podcast, or some of the people like on social media and stuff, when I put out questions, preferred more physical than digital. So I didn't want to talk about something that one audience didn't prefer to where another one is clamoring for it and asking me for it. So these questions let me know I probably need to talk about these things a little bit more, which is good to know. So then, I know every once in a while to throw in conversations, because these are things that I talk about quite a bit. I have quite a few videos on this on the YouTube channel. But I was asked, how often is Comixology updated with new sales and deals? And then is there a certain day each month? Here's the thing about Comixology. I would say they're constantly running sales on the website. Marvel and DC, since they're the two biggest publishers, are normally the ones that run the most consistent sales. Marvel will normally run a sale. A new sale normally starts on Tuesdays. And it will run from Tuesday 12 a.m. till Monday 11 p.m. is normally how their main sales are run. Now, Marvel has been known to run as many as 3 sales at any given time, like overlapping sales that will be specific to characters if a movie's coming out or if a TV show's out. So they Marvel is not afraid to run sales on Comixology, and they have some of the best deals on their sales. So I tend to buy a lot of Marvel books that I'm like curious or on the fringe about. I can get trades as cheap as like $2.50 sometime. So I will snatch them up quick, just based on you can't get any deal that when the individual issues in the trade normally retail from $2 to $3.99, you can get the whole trade with 6 issues for $2.50, $3. So their sales to me are the best value. DC normally will do one sale a week. It normally will be like Tuesday, start on Tuesday as well, and run like the same length. Sometimes I think they've done as much as 2 overlapping at once, but not that often. And then it varies with the other companies. It's multiple sales. They even have a tab, or if you go to Comixology, and I just recommend, I literally go daily because as of this recording, as I'm sitting here recording this episode, I think the day before now, I'm recording this on a Friday, and this is just a weird example. When the new comic book day came out Wednesday, I think that Thursday or maybe even that Wednesday, Marvel dropped another sale. They already had one sale going on. They had another sale that they just randomly dropped on top of it, and you just have to watch it. And they have on the Comixology website, if you see in the main tab, they have like the home icon for them, new sales, browse, and unlimited. If you click on that sales tab, it'll take you to a sales page, and you'll see all the current sale promotions going on at that given time. And literally, I'm telling you, you need to check it like daily, because with the independent companies, they'll have, the one cool thing is they will have the sales listed for you on that page, and like for how long they run. So they'll say it ends on blah blah date, so you can see exactly when it's ending. So that is always something good. And like, if you like manga, they have manga sales, like all the other participating publishers on there. You'll get some, European publishers, you'll get Valiant, you'll get Dynamite, you get, like, it's any publisher, Boom Comics, anyone that participates and sells comics, Image, Action Labs, anybody. And, some are more consistent than others. I would say probably the Marvel and DC are the most consistent. IDW, Image are probably the 2 other ones right behind them, with Valiant following behind them, then like Dynamite and Dark Horse, and they have really good deals. I feel like DC's been doing better recently, and I really think it has a lot to do with a lot of articles that came out through Comic-Con, and I saw a few video interviews where Jim Lee and Dan DiDio were saying how they felt like their digital initiative has failed a lot, and they've gotten more proactive, and they're doing a lot more sales. Like now, when they have sales on Comixology, like I said, I can get trades for like Marvel for like, I can get trades, regular trades, standard trades that have 5 to 6 issues in them for like $2.50. That same trade for DC on sale there is like $5, which is still a good deal from what you would pay retail if you bought it physically. But it's still, that's 2 trades potentially I can get from a Marvel sale compared to the one book I'm getting. But they started doing this thing where even with a lot of their recent books, they've been doing like 99-cent issue sales. So I've been picking up a ton of runs of all like the new DC stuff that I've been trying and liking, like Scott Snyder's Justice League, all the new Justice League books, Justice League, the Scott Snyder Justice League Odyssey, Justice League Dark. I've been getting all those issues, and the new Green Lantern, all the new books. They've had 99-cent issue sales, and then because I'm subscribed to Comixology Unlimited, I get an extra 15% discount. So then those 99-cent issues then turn into 84 cent or 86 cent a piece for me. So you can really rack up if you're easing into the digital route, and then you're a little patient on when you buy stuff and you wait a little bit, and I literally, like, I just recently bought, like, I think I got the first trade of Scott Snyder's Justice League, and then I got every other issue up to issue 26 or 27. I paid 84 cents an issue for them, and I got the whole run. And I think issue 30 just came out recently. You can't beat that. The new Grant Morrison Green Lantern series, I waited a little bit. I got the first 10 issues, 84 cents an issue. New Catwoman. I've picked up a lot of the books, single issues. Their sales have been like pretty good. So I've been racking up that way. So the sales are pretty decent if you're willing to be a little patient from when you're going to read something and see those sales, and then when those sales come up, really pounce on them and really let your dollar stretch and get a lot for your money when those special promotions come up. But my recommendation, if you're going the digital route, the best days to check, Tuesday, Fridays probably. Tuesday, Fridays, or just if you're online any given time, like, one of my, I have a bookmark for Comixology, and I will just pull it up to see, because random sales can pop up from time to time, or they'll have like special limited time promotions from the publishers that come up too. So you might miss out on something. So if you at least check it once a day, you're in the know and you won't miss out on a good deal. So that's my recommendation if you're going that route. Next question I have is, what advice would you offer for someone thinking about starting their own podcast, vlog, or blog? I would say just start. I think sometimes the starting is the hardest thing to do. And so it's just sitting down, pressing record, and committing thoughts to the microphone or to the recorder, and putting them down and getting comfortable in doing that. And I feel like the more practice you have in doing that, the more comfortable you get, the easier it becomes, and it becomes a psychological hurdle for you to progress, and you will perfect as you go along. And I always say, like, as long as you're talking about the things that you like and enjoy and that you're knowledgeable about, you're ultimately going to have the most fun doing it, and it's going to be easier for you to get into it. I say this to try to have a rough plan as far as about, maybe a name and a rough format, like how often before you start, like, hey, how often do I want to, record and put out episodes? Do I want to do it weekly? Do I want to do it monthly? And then, depending on how it feels, how I'm going to do it, try to have a rough outline on how you want to approach it before starting. But then after you kind of get that feel together on, this is what I'm going to call the show, this is what the show is going to focus on, and this is how frequently I think I want to start doing it, then just get your setup together. And you don't need, I think the biggest misconception I see, and what held me back from doing like YouTube, doing a version of this show on YouTube for the longest time, is that I saw so many things and I saw all these barriers, like, you got to have $1,000 camera, and you got to have this, and you got to have that, you got to have this and that. And I'm like, I can't afford that. I want to do YouTube because I think it would help grow my show and help people get exposed to the message I'm trying to put out with the positivity and building a positive comics community. But can I afford to do it? And then I just took the equipment that I had. I had a 5 or 6 year old camcorder. I bought a couple of cheap lights that I found through Amazon. Got a $20 lab mic, and then later a mic to go on top of it. I spent less than $100. I used what I already had around me and about $100 out of my pocket to get a few accessories to try to make it look as good as possible, and just started doing it. And I was nervous, and it was different from sitting in front of a microphone recording audio than doing, my face being up there. But, the biggest part of the journey is just starting. Everything else you can figure out once you get going. Same thing with like a blog or a vlog. The video blog is what a vlog is. It's a similar kind of thing. Vlogging, my style is not a vlog for my YouTube channel. It's kind of a talking head kind of situation. It's me sitting at a desk, talking about particular subjects. I want to do more vlog style where I'm out and about, visiting comic shops, different places, meeting you guys, different places, and like vlogging that experience. So that's what I'm like looking to do, especially going into next year, coming out of having my procedure done, doing this weight loss surgery and getting healed up and being a lot healthier, where I can get back out and go to different conventions and stuff. I want to meet the community, meet the Savant Society, and like do that more kind of stuff. It's just doing it. Don't be afraid. Be fearless and just have fun. The biggest thing, if you're going to do something like this, that, you know, when you do a podcast, it's like, yeah, you know, like I have the Patreon campaign. I have different ways that you guys can contribute. But, you know, for most of my 13 years, I didn't have any of that. It was just something I did as a labor of love that I put out for free because I wanted like-minded people to talk and share comic books with. So, you know, as long as you have pure intentions and you're having fun doing it, that's the most important part, and I think you'll have a blast. And I've had a blast the whole time doing it. You know, it's just me wanting to take it further, where it's like, okay, after you've done it for so many years, it's like, okay, I need more equipment. I want to go to these conventions and meet more of the community and stuff, where, you know, that will grow, you know, organically as time goes. But just when you're starting out, it's just concentrating on starting and having fun. And like I said, try to have an idea of what your show is going to cover, and, you know, try to make it as broad as possible, because I feel like sometimes I've talked to different people that, you know, sometimes they say they focus on one part, and as they grow as a podcaster or YouTuber and their interests expand, then you're kind of pigeonholed in. That's why I always said what Comic Book Savant was about was it would encompass anything connected to the comic book industry, be it comic book and comic book reviews, being industry talk, being movies, animation, video games. If it was attached or connected to the comic book or the comic book industry in some way, it was fair game to talk about through anything that Comic Book Savant was associated with. And that's what I've stuck to, and that's what it's been. So, you know, I've had people review me on like iTunes and try to throw shade and was like, well, he doesn't review comic books, but I talk about the comic book and comic book industry. That is what the mission statement of it's always been, you know. So sometimes, you know, if you say, oh, well, if you want the best comic book reviews, just come here. That's what we do here. And then later you're doing comic book movie reviews, and like people might start, you know, giving you kind of, you know, heat for changing up, you know, what they might, air quotes, know you for, and like pigeonhole you in, and then they're not accepting to you expanding your horizons. Keep your horizons as open as possible and let them know, hey, I love comics and everything surrounding comics, and that's what we do here. And, you know, or I'm going to talk comics and video games and movies. Like, these are my three interests, and these are the three things I'm going to cover. And leave it as open as possible so they know what to expect going in. And you don't have to feel like later like you can't talk about something that you're really interested in. You know, so that's one other suggestion I would give in that area. Next question is, which character from each publisher would you retire for a while, and which ones would you give a big push? And maybe their own titles too. I would retire for Marvel. I would retire Deadpool. DC, I would retire Flash, Barry Allen. Marvel, I would push Heroes for Hire, because I love the early 2000s John Ostrander series of Heroes for Hire, and I miss those characters altogether. It was a fun series that I would love to see come back. And for DC, I would push Kyle Rayner, because when I came into DC Comics like heavily in my early 20s, like my early college years, I got heavy into DC, and Wally was my Flash. That's why, you know, I don't care for Barry as much as I care for Wally, though I don't like a lot of things that have gone on recently that I've been catching up with DC reading when it comes to Wally. But I preferred him as my Flash compared to Barry. And Kyle was my Green Lantern that I came into when I started reading Green Lantern, when I first was, like I said, really diving into DC lore and universe stuff heavy. And I like the character, and I feel like he's been so mishandled coming out of that. So once Hal got brought back, and he just really has got lost in the sauce. And I thought he was a really good Green Lantern character. I loved Ron Mars's run, and even later Judd Winnick's run with Kyle Rayner. And it's just a shame that I really don't know what's going on with the character. I know he's been a part of so many different things still connected with the Green Lanterns and in their universe, but it's just like he's so so just has gotten buried. And I think I always thought he was such a viable character, and it's just sad to see that nothing productive has really been done with him as a character. And I really hate it personally, because I thought he was a good character. They just kind of mishandled. Next question I have: if you could write any title that you wanted to, whether it was current title or you were rebooting an old title, what would you write? I thought this was like the easy one right here for me. This was like the easiest question, I think, out of all of the questions, probably except for the horror question. Well, it would have to be Nightwing, because I love Dick Grayson. I hate what they have done with the character over the past multiple years, and I would so reboot that title like so hard. It would be a major retcon to a lot of stuff that's happened with Dick Grayson over the past 5, 6, I don't know. Ever since the New 52, I've just been so disappointed with DC and how they've handled Nightwing. And or Checkmate. I loved Greg Rucka's run on Checkmate as a team book. It was very ahead of its time, and it was the political intrigue and spy espionage. It was just written so well, and I think it was, at the time, it was too much for people. People weren't ready for that. We've had things like since then, like Game of Thrones and like The Americans and all these different like shows that played up the same elements that's in that comic, that I just think people weren't ready for and overlooked it. They were like, oh, it's too heady or it's too much. But now I think is this ahead of its time. If it was hitting now, it would be a major hit. And I would like to revisit those characters, man. It was a really, really good book. If you haven't read Greg Rucka's Checkmate, they have it in trade. They have his whole run in trade. I think it's Checkmate by Greg Rucka, books 1 and 2. There's 2 volumes that covers his whole run on that series. It only lasted a few more issues after he left the book. I know I have it here. Let me make sure if it has his whole run in it or not. I think it has its own run, but I don't know if it has the whole series or not. Checkmate. Here we go. Because another writer picked it up. No, okay, so yeah, the 2 books only has his run. He wrote 25 issues of it. I think the series went up to I think like issue 36 or something like that. I can't remember what writer replaced him on the book after he left. I'm looking here. So, excuse me, no, it looks like it only went to 31 issues. So, after he left at 25, it literally only lasted 6 more issues after he left. And I'm not sure who wrote it. But so, pretty much, you get his whole run. And it's one other trade that you can pick up if you want to pick up whoever came on and closed it out. But as long as you get these 2 trades, they retail for about $17 retail. But online, you can find them way cheaper. Great series. Anyway, those would be the 2 projects that I would love to write. Next question I had: if you had to kill off one character from comics never to return again, who would it be? Now, this was a tough one. Now, I know certain things, but I don't want to give out any spoilers. Certain things happen in comics recently, so some of this might be redundant, but this is just how I personally feel. And I was tied for 3 characters. I was tied. My tie is between Alfred, because I would really like to see the impact Alfred dying would have on Batman if they kept him dead, like long term. They didn't do some retcon or do something to bring him back somehow. Like it really stuck. Like they really killed off Alfred, and see the aftershocks and the repercussions that it would have across the whole Bat family, because everyone's so close. Like Damien's super close. Bruce is close to him. Like everybody in the Bat family loves Alfred. So see how it would affect the Bat family. Like if he was really gone, not to ever to return, how they would write that going forward. Next would be Wolverine. Like, finally kill him and keep him dead. Like, quit bringing him back. Don't bring back an old man Logan version of him. Kill him, keep him dead. Don't bring him back. Just let it go. He's been around long enough, but I know he's super popular and I love the character, but I feel like at certain times he's just overexposed to the gills in the comics, and just like let that one ride. Let that go. Let that go sometime. Like, enough is enough. And Deadpool, similar thing, like overexposed. I've never been a super huge Deadpool fan. I liked him more in the beginning, before he, got super popular in comics, before the movies and all that. Like, when he first started, the first few, like, Deadpool limited series is what I liked. And the beginning of the Joe Casey stuff back in the day. And I even enjoyed when they did the cable Deadpool series. That was even kind of fun. But just now, I just feel like he is so overexposed and like so like just extra. So it's just too much. Like, I could do. Those are some things that I would do when I would. That's who they would be. Next question was, what was your favorite weapon / accessories, etc., etc. I'm old school, and I've always romanticized about like things like swords, bow and arrows. Even in junior high school, I took a couple of archery things, and I for the longest time, even when I first moved here to Texas, I wanted a bow and arrow and wanted to pick up archery again. I was pretty decent at it, and because I've always loved Hawkeye, I've always loved Green Arrow. I thought that was like, you had to be super skillful to use a weapon like that, and like to really be able to like to use a sword. But I always fixate on bow and arrows, and I love video games like Tomb Raider and stuff, where you get to use a bow and arrow. I don't know what it is. I thought it's such a classic weapon that requires so much skill to use. So that it has a high. You have to have a high level to be able to be good at using a weapon like that. Anybody can use a gun and squeeze a trigger, but like to use a bow and arrow and to be as deadly, you have to be really good at it. So that's the one I fixate on. Now, this next question was probably one of the toughest questions I ever got asked in anything that if people really ask me questions. And it was like, you have to make an awesome superhero team of heroes. You can use any hero from any publisher from any time period. Your team has to be 7 people or robots or whatever. Once you have your 7, you need to choose your Jarvis, that one person who mans the base and feeds your team, etc., etc. Then finally, you have to choose your base. It can be a base from any time period. You just have to choose a base and location. So that's 7-person team plus butler plus base. Okay, my team consisted of some of my favorite people and some of my favorite heroes in comics. Now, probably since what I said earlier, you're going to know who some of these people on this team is going to be. I'm going to have Nightwing from the Chuck Dixon run of Nightwing. I'm going to have Hawkeye, and I'm going to have Hawkeye from the Thunderbolts run. I think Fabian Nicienza wrote that, where he was the leader of the Thunderbolts team. Love that rendition of Hawkeye. I'm going to have Robert Kirkman's Invincible. And I'm going to have Rogue, Jason Todd, Wonder Woman from Greg. Got to have Greg Rucka's version of Wonder Woman from his run. And I'm going to have Snake Eyes. This is going to be like a covert stealth, hard-hitting, kind of like X-Force, Black Ops kind of team is the feel I'm getting. But you got to have some powered individuals in there as the muscle, but that can hit hard and quick. So that's where I have Invincible and Rogue in there and Wonder Woman. You got to have some power people in there. And then having a Jason Todd in there and Nightwing, they have friction there. Then you can have a friction dynamic of who's really the leader between Nightwing and Hawkeye. So you can have some good dynamics for a good team book. Like I said, I'm a sucker for team books. I loved them as a kid. You have a stealth person like Snake Eyes. You got an emotionally unhinged person potentially like Jason Todd. You have a powerhouse female as Rogue, which is one of my favorite X-Men female characters. Wonder Woman, one of my favorite characters overall, and one of my favorite female characters, period, is Wonder Woman as well. And you have like more cool stealth people like Snake Eyes, just a cool ninja. You got to have a ninja in the group somewhere. You just got to. I wouldn't have a butler for the team, but I would have a team operator, and I would have Oracle. I don't want Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, the new Batgirl, old Batgirl. I want Oracle. Wheelchair, Birds of Prey, original Birds of Prey, Chuck Dixon run, Birds of Prey, Oracle in the clock tower doing her thing. In the headquarters, I thought about this long and hard. And I was going to say Scuttlebutt would be their base, because I love when X Factor used Scuttlebutt. If you've listened to the previous episode when I talked about some of my favorite headquarters in comics, I used Scuttlebutt, which was a alien ship, the sentient alien ship that X-Force used as a base of operations. But I would want something a little bit more mobile, because they kind of floated above the atmosphere, like over New York and stuff, and then they would deploy out places. I don't know what it would be, though. It had to be something unique that they could. Oh, I know, I did come up with it. I did. My wife helped me figure out what I was thinking about. If you've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they had the bus. They had a ship, base, airplane base, but then it had a Quinjet basically like on top that they could deploy out for missions. But then they could go back to the main airplane. I think they called it the bus, and it was dope. I would have the bus from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Then they would have their individual Quinjet on the top that they could just, they had like a staircase in like the middle of the bus that like went up to a dock that you would go right up into the Quinjet, and then you could take off. I would have that. That is dope. I would have that, the bus. Awesome mobile headquarters for this awesome team. I think I nailed that one. I might not agree with the team. You might be like, that's a little crazy. But if you think about it, a covert black ops team that will go in, hit hard, under the radar, that's good right there. That makes for good drama. That lineup, I would buy that book. I would write it and buy it. Let's see. Last question I have for this round of Ask Comic Book Savant is, you have to choose a villain from any publisher or timeline and revamp/reboot that character to become the latest hot property villain. Who would it be? What powers would you give/take away? Please describe this ultimate new and improved villain. And I'm going to say this, Taskmaster. I know he's about to premiere in the MCU in the Black Widow movie. I always have liked Taskmaster, and I liked Fred Van Lente did a Taskmaster. I can't remember the name of it. He did a Taskmaster limited series back in 2002. It was a 4-issue limited series. It was called. No, my bad. Was it that one? Excuse me. No. This was 2010. No, it was one done in 2002 by who did this? I got him confused. That was my bad. I'm trying to see who did which one. In 2002. I gotta pick this up. No, it's not the 2002 series. It is the 2010 series. Fred Van Lente did a limited series. The trade is called. Let me go back here. Yeah, Unthinkable. Taskmaster Unthinkable. Who was the team on it? I don't remember who the artist was. Fred Van Lente, Hefte Paulo. 4-issue limited series. Came out, like I said, back in 2010. It was really good, and they really dove into his history. Really shed some light that he was like a operative for S.H.I.E.L.D. He had amnesia. That's kind of is I don't want to give the whole thing away, but it's a good limited series. Check it out. I like what he did in that series, and I didn't really see it taken further. That he was kind of a good guy. He had, amnesia. He was like being a double agent and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. But it gave him a cool spy vibe, and he kind of made him a sympathetic character. But you can still, but he still chose to be a little bit more villainous. And his powers were fine. They kind of revamped. I liked the 2002. The 2002 series was done by some artists from Image. I think they were from like Dreamwave Studios. I talked about them in a previous episode. Dreamwave Studios over at Image, and so they did like a total like kind of anime, really cool revamped look to Taskmaster, where it's more like his mask was like a hockey mask, and they really modernized and updated his outfit. I vaguely remember the series. I had the physical copies. It was another 4-issue miniseries, but it looks dynamic. It looks I like the revamp they did on the outfit in that comic, but with everything that Van Lente did in that unimaginable or unthinkable limited series, merge those two together. Perfect version of Taskmaster. Take that run, take it all the way to the bank. He would be more, because he looks corny in the outfit. Let's just sum it up. The outfit that the Taskmaster has is like one of the corniest outfits I've ever seen in comics. It like really is. But I think like how he's written and how he's portrayed in both of these series, they really make him a compelling, cool character. So I think all the stuff is there. They already have it there. They just have to fuse it all together and run with it. And I think it would really strike hot. They could really do a lot with his character, because his powers, he can mimic powers from any person that he sees. So that can be deadly. Like, he could take on whole super teams, and he has. But they just kind of always punk him out at the end as a villain. But like, if you really like let him catch a win sometimes instead of always catching an L, that you can make him very menacing and make him a huge big bad for someone. Most of the people that he's associated with is, kind of like Hawkeye. They normally go back and forth and stuff a lot, and he's tangled with the Avengers multiple times over the past. But you could take basically Taskmaster, and he could be the equivalent of Marvel of DC's Deathstroke over in the Marvel universe if you play him right. I think all the things are there to make him just as cool and menacing if they just pull the trigger and follow through on it. So here's hoping that maybe with him coming up in the movies as being a villain, that they really revamp the character and juice him up going forward. But I think they've already had things done in the past. They just didn't follow up with them to make him what he could potentially be, because that's what I always saw him as equivalent of like a Deadshot / Deathstroke character for Marvel. So, who knows? But that's what I think, if that makes sense. But that's all the questions that I have for the last round of questions. So this is episode 2, or the second Ask Comic Book Savant. Again, since I've gotten this one done, I will post a thread for the upcoming episode. So again, it could be a month from when you're hearing this, or it could be a little bit longer, just based on if I get a good number of questions like I did for this round. Once I feel like it's a good amount to cover an episode, then I'll cut off the questions and record the next episode. So it will be coming in the future based on the questions I get from you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, you can find me on social media. On Instagram and Twitter at Comic Book Savant. You can always hit the website up for everything Comic Book Savant related at comicbooksavant.com. Also, if you're interested in becoming a patron and supporting the show and getting some behind the scenes and exclusives, as well as a whole exclusive podcast that's included with the Patreon campaign, at the starting point of contributing $1 a month, you get the Comic Book Savant extra podcast feed. So you get double the podcast by joining on the Patreon at even at the $1 price point of supporting the show. You get 4 more episodes a month through that, with other exclusives and behind the scenes stuff as well. So definitely, if you can contribute, I greatly appreciate it. It just helps the show get better. But I appreciate all the support you guys give. I appreciate you guys submitting the questions. I had a lot of fun answering them. And again, keep submitting them. Keep submitting new questions. We'll keep doing these episodes if you enjoy them and answering away. So I appreciate it all. Thank you guys for your support. And as always, you guys stay safe until we speak again. I'm James Harris, the Comic Book Savant, and I will catch you guys next time. You guys be safe, and I'll talk to you soon.